Good evening, and welcome to Real Sports, where we begin tonight with a startling statistic. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, sports injuries among young people are second only to motor vehicle accidents as the leading cause of brain injury. Now, that's especially significant for today's young football players, because about 1.25 million kids are playing high school football across the nation this year. And before their season is done, it's been estimated that those players, along with Youngerwoods and junior programs, will collectively suffer almost 200,000 concussions. That's a scary number. What's even more frightening is that experts predict that about 40% of those kids who suffer concussions will return to action prematurely. And especially for young players, a premature return to the football field can be deadly.
Look out, there's a big-time play.
It's a game of hit and be hit. It's essentially what football's all about. And it's why those who play it subscribe to the same unwritten code. You play through the pain. It's what football players of all ages are expected to do. There's just one problem. Playing through the pain can have dire consequences when the pain involved is a headache resulting from a concussion.
You think that maybe, concussion is just something that hurts.
You never give it a thought.
No.
Victor Lystedt never did give concussions a thought, as his 13-year-old son, Zack, began playing for his junior high team near Seattle.
He was a good football player, and everyone started recognizing the fact that he was a great ball carrier also. So he started playing fullback and outside linebacker.
Had he ever suffered any kind of injuries?
No.
I learned not to go on my knees from my dad.
Unfortunately for Zack and his dad, everything changed when the youngster suffered his first injury in a game 3 years ago. It came on this play at the end of the first half as Zack raced downfield to make a tackle. When he hit the ground, his head snapped back, and he began clutching his helmet, clearly in pain.
You couldn't see that where we were. I was on the sideline and back a bit. And
did you try to speak to him?
I can remember yelling over to Zack, and he kind of gave me the, hey, Dad, don't embarrass me look, and I was like, all right, whatever. Are you all right? And he kind of just turned back around, and I didn't know what his nature of injury was.
Doctors would later say that Zack had sustained a concussion. It should have forced him to the sidelines, and he should never have gone back into the game. But he did. His coaches thought he was okay, and so did his father, until the game ended. That's when Victor Lystedt could tell that something was terribly wrong.
I'm like, what's wrong, Zack? What's going on, man? He's like, Dad, my head. It hurts so bad. It's killing me. And it got really bad,
Did he collapse?
Yeah, he collapsed. His pupil blew, and he went down. And before that, the last thing he said is, I can't see, Dad.
You felt helpless.
Oh, dude. And then you got to call your wife? Yeah, that's bad. Tell your wife your kid's dying. It's too much, man.
Because he had not yet recovered from the concussion he had suffered in the first half, doctors say Zack's brain had begun to swell uncontrollably from taking hit after hit. He was in serious condition when he was airlifted to Seattle Trauma Center and was almost dead when his parents arrived by car.
When we finally got to the hospital, half of his skull was already taken off. They needed to immediately take the bone off on one side
to allow the brain to swell.
To allow the pressure to relieve itself.
Zack was ultimately placed in intensive care, where he remained at death's door for 2 weeks.
How about if we work on your balance a little bit?
Today, 3 years later, Zack Lystedt is still unable to walk on his own.
Okay.
Doctors say it's likely that he never will, but that hasn't stopped him from trying.
Take a shot. Go ahead.
Go for it. Nice.
Now push.
You're not mobile, but you can move your arm, your legs.
Yeah, so I can wait.
That's pretty good.
I can kind of move my right arm. See?
Now, is that hard to do for you? Does it require a lot?
Yeah, it requires a lot to focus.
Zack's days, for now and for the foreseeable future, are filled with physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy.
He had only a couple of minutes
His mother, Mercedes, long ago quit her job to care for her son. How many hours a day we talking?
For his therapies?
Yeah.
24/7.
Really?
That's just not including the therapy part taking in places. When I get home, it still goes on.
While Zack Lystedt is certainly an extreme example of what can happen when a youngster gets back into a game too soon after suffering a concussion, he's hardly an exception. Just last season alone, 11 high school football players suffered catastrophic head injuries after enduring their first concussion, and 4 players died. A recent study by Nationwide Children's Hospital found that more than 40% of high school athletes return to action before the symptoms of their first concussion are even clear. Experts say that's a certain prescription for disaster.
There's a big difference in terms of kids and older athletes. Why? With regard to their symptoms. Kids are more vulnerable to concussion.
Dr. Mark Lovell runs one of the top sports concussion clinics in the country out of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Lovell says you'll never be able to prevent a kid from getting a first concussion playing ball, and that most kids can recover 100% if they're given time to heal. It's returning to play too soon that poses the real risk, because of something called second impact syndrome, something that only affects kids and can sometimes be fatal.
Second impact syndrome occurs when an athlete has had a previous injury and then has a second injury while the brain is still recovering from the first injury.
Why are kids especially vulnerable, kids who are playing high school football?
The brains are still developing. There's a lot going on in terms of the brain sorting itself out and developing in children that we think makes them much more vulnerable to the effects of injury than adults.
During football season, Lovell sees about 200 high school kids a week at his clinic. One of the biggest issues he faces is simply getting youngsters to tell the truth about their symptoms. It's why he devised something called an impact test. It's a 30-minute neurocognitive test that measures a player's memory and reaction time. Given before the season, it provides doctors with a baseline that they can later use for comparison purposes to see if and when a player is symptom-free. It's used in the NFL, the NHL, and now in about 4,000 high schools nationwide. If I'm an athlete and you ask me, and I want to get back in, and you ask me, do you have a headache? I say no. Could you tell if I'm lying?
No test is infallible, but the idea is we're giving a challenge test to the athlete that makes their brain work hard. It's kind of like a stress test for the brain. But athletes are notorious for not telling us about their symptoms, so we always have to be on guard for that. Athletes of all ages, I've seen athletes as young as 8 who lie to me about their symptoms because they want to keep playing, and they don't understand the ramifications of what happens if they continue to play.
Doherty is in pursuit and he makes a big play.
Ryan Doherty is one of those players who didn't fully understand the ramifications of a concussion. Ryan, from Montclair, New Jersey, was just 16 years old when he died last October after making a seemingly innocent tackle during a JV game. His mother, Marina, still can't believe that her son is gone.
You know, it's not only my son, it's my friend, my confidant, it's my everything.
You lost your best friend, your confidant.
My everything, my everything, my everything.
It turns out that a full 3 weeks before Ryan Doherty's fatal tackle, he had suffered a concussion in practice. Proper care was taken, and Ryan's doctor even made him sit out for 14 days. Ultimately, after being sidelined for 2 weeks, Ryan told his coaches, his doctor, and his mother that he was feeling just fine, that all his symptoms were gone. So he seemed normal to you?
Yes, yes.
You were satisfied that the doctors and the officials had done everything to clear him, to check him out, to make sure that he was okay to play again?
Yes, doctors are doctors, yes.
Trouble is, Ryan Doherty told his teammates, McIntosh Rislin, Travis Hubbard, and Brandon Young, something entirely different.
He had been talking about his headaches. He said to me, he was like, no, I'm still gonna play, He was like, I'm all right, I'm good.
But he told you were still having headaches.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting, it doesn't matter the level if it was freshman, JV, sophomore, varsity. If you gave Ryan a chance to go play on this field, he's gonna play on this field.
Did he tell you he was having headaches too?
Yeah, I remember Don Bosco like it was nothing.
But knowing what you know now, do you wish you'd told somebody he was still having headaches?
I blame myself for this, for a while after he passed. I just felt like, because I know that I've played with headache, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think that it would have gone as far as it did.
Is there any such thing as a normal time frame? I mean, could you arbitrarily say, 2 weeks you're safe?
Not really, because there's so much variation in terms of how people recover. 40% of the high school athletes that we've studied are better within 2 weeks. But even when you get out to about a month after injury, there's still 20% of that group who aren't better yet.
Even for Ryan Doherty's teammates, who lost their friend less than a year ago, it's the player's code that remains uppermost in their minds, not the risk of a second concussion. So if you get one first day of practice next year, what happens?
I would not want to stop playing. I did. Especially because of this.
It's our senior year.
So it's still code of the game?
Yeah. You literally need to put me on the stretcher, if you can put me on the stretcher, because I will fight it to get me off this field.
The player's macho code that you play hurt is still, it seems, the prevailing attitude among high school football players across this country. That attitude, and the lengthy list of recent injuries, has prompted legislators in 4 states to pass laws aimed at essentially protecting high school players from themselves, preventing them from returning to action too soon after a concussion. The strictest law in the books is law number 1824 in the state of Washington. There it's commonly known as the Zack Lystedt law. You see, not only has Zack Lystedt been working tirelessly at rehabilitating his body in the 3 years since his life changed, his family has also been trying to make sure that what happened to their son doesn't happen to anyone else.
It's a very important day.
On this day last February, the Lystedts went to testify to state lawmakers about getting a bill introduced.
You ready?
The bill they were pushing would mandate that a kid who suffers a concussion be held out of any game or practice until he's cleared for action by a certified healthcare provider.
I, for one, had my life changed drastically.
After more than a year of rallying support and lobbying lawmakers, the Zack Lystedt law, on May 14th, became a reality with the governor's signature.
There's your law, Zachary. Congratulations.
All right.
And while state laws may help, in the end, concussions aren't like broken bones or pulled muscles. They can be difficult to diagnose and hard for kids or their parents to even understand. All the more reason, Victor Lystedt says, for everyone involved, coaches, parents, and players, to pay attention and use their head.
If your kid shows any signs or symptoms, or if they hit their head, they're dazed, they're confused, they don't get immediately right back up, they don't have to lose consciousness, this can happen to you. And it happened to us, so I guarantee you it can happen to you.
2 quick footnotes. If you're thinking greater diligence on the part of trainers could alleviate the problem, it might surprise you to learn that only about 42% of all high schools in this country even have access to a certified athletic trainer. There wasn't one on the sidelines when Zack Lystedt was hurt, which may be why just last month, Zack's school district and his family agreed on a financial settlement that will cover the boy's needs for the rest of his life. Let's move on to a story that is driven by a strange and disturbing statistic. In this country, an African-American child is 3.5 times more likely to drown than a white